In this video, we're going to show you how to use Swing to add more components. We call components like JLabel, JButtons. Okay, let me show you the hierarchy again first. So we want to look at Swing, Java Swing, right? So we want to look at the diagrams like this. So we see these are J component. That's why I would say they are component, like J components. Like we have J menu item, just like the way that we used to see on Android too. We have menu, right, and menu item. We can actually do that too. We have J buttons, J checkbox, J radio buttons. See that? Sliders. We have J tree, toolbar, J table, scroll bar. So, and you can see this in your assignments too. Okay. Now, we're going to say we want JButton. We just say private JButton button and import JButton. Alright, so in the constructor, we're going to say button equals to new JButton and just say click me. Right. Now, after that, you need to add the button to the frame, which if I say add is the method of the JFrame to add the button to the frame. Alright, so let's run and see if we get a button. Voila, we get a big button, right? Because we didn't do the layout, just like when I drag the button in, it's just the default layout, right? Default layout, let's try to compare to the phone, right? The Android app that we just seen. When you drag in, it's just default layout. We need to keep the layout. Like for Android, you can actually just drag and drop. But for this, they have the Windows like Kids Builder too. If you install plugins, you can drag and drop too. But our point here, we don't want to do that because we try to study the code, then we understand, right? How the code being created. So, because drag and drop is simple to do. After you understand this, then it's going to be easier for you to read Android code too, right? So, we need a layout. So the layout, we have flow layout, grid layout, same thing that we see on Android, right? So flow, by default, this is going to use, we have border layout, box layout, card layout, flow layout, grid back layout. Just like what we've seen on Android, we have many layouts, right? Group layout, spring layout. So if you look at, by default, it's just border layout and set it to center for the frame. So that's why the buttons go to the center. Okay, so if I say set layout new, right, flow layout. So flow layout, need to import that too. So set layout is a method of JFrame that we inherited here, right? So let's see what we get. See? So that's a flow layout. Like you add the first button go there. Now if I want to add a second button, I'm going to create, let's say, button 1, button 2, button 3, right? Let's say I do 3 buttons. So I'm going to change this to number 1. So this is going to be number 2. and this is going to be number 3. So you can add the button to the flow layout. It's going to be like a flow. That means, let's see, if I add 3 first, button 3 is going to go first, like 3, 2, 1, and from left to right. If you end up with the first line, like reaching the border, it's just going to go to the next line, like flow, like that. Like if we do 1, 2, 3, it's going to say add 1, 2, 3, so like a flow, right? So that's why we call flow layout. Now, think about if you try to add the button like that, if it's the same buttons, you can start to apply loop to help, right? Like for int I equal to 0, I less than, let's say I want to add 100 buttons, right? I can make it loops like that, I plus plus. So now we have to change this to an array of buttons, correct? We talk about array, right? Then we can do button equals to new JButton. Alright, when you use an array of button or an array of instances like this, you have to be very careful, because you have to do an array size here, which you didn't instantiate the JButton. You just set the size to an array, right? So now like this is not instantiating. We want to instantiate the button, each button as the I equals to new JButton right in here, correct? This is just giving you the size as 100, right? And you can just say string dot. What's the method that you change integer to string? Value of, right? And put I. So because when you set the text to the button, it has to be string, right? So then I have 100 buttons instantiated as an array here. Now I can use this to add the buttons. So I can set the layout first right here, and then we can start to add the buttons. Which is button I, and we use flow layout, and we add 100 of buttons with different numbers. Voila, right? 0 to 99. And that's the flow layout. You see that? The first one sizing is different because it's only 1 digit. Like I said, when it's reached the 8, it's just going new line, right? So we can make a quick game, right? What type of game that you use that? It can be Battleship. It can be the user action. We can make buttons to listen to the user action now, right? So we can do add action listener. And we want to add action listener to each button. And we need to implement action listener. And you require to import first. So this is from Java AWT event. So you have to listen to event. This one has to add to the button, not to the frame. So I have to say because I try to add the action listener to the buttons when you click, right? So there's a method add action listener right there. Okay. So I can use Eclipse add action listener to each button that way. So I don't do the other way, right? And now this is, you add to each button by do dot for the button. Like before, if I do like that, I try to add action to the frame, which we don't have that. So we try to add to the buttons this way. So now this is a part that you need to pass the argument or parameter to it. If you look at action listener, they're looking for an argument type of action listener. Okay. So if you do new action listener, you need to add an implemented methods. Okay. So because action listener is an interface, we talk about when it is an interface, you need to implement the abstract method. Last class we talked about abstract, right? It's overriding. So let's recap this. What I just did, I just adding an action listener to the button that I just created, right, of them. I add action to all the 100 buttons at the same time. To add an action, add action listener means you listen to the user click. That's what it is. When the user click, what you want to perform. Okay. So that's why we need an interface implement action listener. And interface has to be an abstract action performed because you don't know what the user wants to show when you click. That's why we let the user create it. Now I'm going to say J option pane dot show message dialog. And this is going to be to this refer to this frame as the parent message. I'm going to say you click button and concatenate with the I. Oh, we see the I. We don't have I. Passing in because this is different. Yeah, this is different. The scope is not valid anymore. This is like new class. This is when I build it like this. It's just like I implement a constructor. This is called a constructor, right? Inside the bracket like that. See? So and I just implement the method action performed it. So that's why I is not valid in this scope anymore. I is only valid in this for. They don't know what's I. Okay. Now if you want this to be valid, you need to change modifier of I to be final. Let's see if it's liking it. Alright, so I just going to test without the I first by checking if it's working. You have just click a button. Now if I do inside new action listener implementing like this, then you don't need this. Okay, you don't need that, so I can just remove that because I call it inside and implementing inside right here. So you can just run as Java application.